You are listening to the REI Mastermind Podcast. Join JD as he chats with industry-leading real estate experts and professionals. We learn from their experience and uncover the strategies to their success that we can implement into our own businesses, and we can drive immediate results today. They share their experience and wisdom as we build a foundation to our own success. This is the REI Mastermind Network.
We have Danny Johnson on the call, and Danny is known as the Flipping Junkie. So you can head over to flippingjunkie.com for some of the corresponding links. But kind of excited to talk to you today, Danny, because I mean, you kind of are a serial entrepreneur, if you will. I mean, you go from flipping houses to, which is like 1,000 deals. You've done nearly 1,000 deals, or you've probably exceeded that by now. You're not only financially free, but you also have the Flipping Junkie podcast and blog. You got a new podcast called Braver for those people who've been in the business a little bit. You've been a founder of Lead Propeller. I think everybody's heard of Lead Propeller. And then you also have a CRM, Forefront. I mean, what else am I missing here? I mean, I'm sure the list could be pretty long.
Oh, it could be. Yeah. And thank you so much for having me on, Jack. I actually have just narrowed down some of that and focused mainly on a couple things now is just the podcast. But yeah, I think I have a problem with starting things, but I guess that's just being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, that's just part of it. So that leads me right into our discussion here today is being an entrepreneur. And I wanted to take a moment and talk about how things changed for you when you stopped treating real estate investing and flipping as a hobby and actually treated it as a business. And I think that's a mindset change and a process change that people actually have to go through.
Big time. Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't have been able to start all and expand and grow all of the things that I have worked on that list that you just mentioned had it not been for us doing that. You know, I got started in real estate back in 2003. I did it part-time for almost 3 years. I had to be fired from my job for me to go full-time because I wanted that steady paycheck. And then whenever I was going to be fired, my manager was telling me he was going to fight for me. And I told him, no, don't bother. I need this kick in the pants to fly out of the nest and just take off with the real estate investing. Because I was already losing money by not, spending my time real estate investing and doing, working that job instead. And then spent so that was about 3 years of part-time. Then going full-time, probably spent about 5 or 6 years, my ex-wife and I running that business, wearing all the hats. So I was handling all the marketing, including stuffing envelopes and, putting stamps on, all that kind of stuff, taking calls, setting appointments, going on appointments, making offers, following up, handling the transaction of buying the house, lining up contractors, doing the scope of work, writing the contract, managing the rehab and all of that. Right. And so as you can imagine, when you're doing that, it's time consuming. I mean, and you end up in feast and famine, right? Like if I crank up my marketing, I get some results. Typically it's 2 to 3 months down the line, leads coming in and I start getting some deals. I get busy with the deals. I slack off of my marketing. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like this cycle, feast and famine. And the interesting thing is when looking back at that, I was considering, okay, why did it take so long to come to a place where I realized I should bring on some help, right? Grow a team so that we weren't doing everything ourselves. And I think a lot of it stemmed from this idea that I had that if I brought on people to help, I would then be responsible for them and their families, right? Mm-hmm. I would have to generate enough, keep things growing enough to be able to support them. And with that came this idea that wasn't really thought about. I don't know that I thought about it or talked about it at the time, but if we wanted to before, the idea was there that we could take 3 months off, not do any marketing or deals, and have a long vacation or something. Well, that was never possible because we were too busy. Even a weekend vacation was tricky because those calls were coming in, and the fear of losing out on some home run deal caused me to have to pick up the phone, answer the phone, and then schedule an appointment for as soon as I got back. So I'm always mentally there. Like I just had to be on top of it at all times. And so the freedom that I thought that having the business just be us and be small was actually not freedom. It was the exact opposite of it.
Sure. So what was the first person that you decided to bring on?
The first person we brought on was an acquisitions person. So somebody to go on the appointments, because that was very time consuming. And that was, oddly enough, that was a spot that I didn't want to let go of the most. I was too afraid of trusting somebody else with going on those appointments. Which was interesting. And it took, a good friend of mine, Justin Williams, kind of showing me what he was doing and the success he was having with his team, and him constantly telling me they're going to do better than you, Danny, because they're going to be focused on that position. That's going to be their position and hone their skills. But most importantly, they're going to have the time to sit there because we did mostly direct to seller. We would do motivated seller marketing to get leads and buy the deals. And so they're going to have the time to be able to sit down on the couch and have those conversations and connect with the seller. Whereas I gotten to the point where I would go in, walk around the house, calculate a rough idea of rehab cost, and then make an offer and be out the door within 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Right. I just okay, I had too much to do. I got to go to the next one, or I have to go and get this marketing out or do this and that. And it's interesting because I at one point I had actually written a book. It started on the Flipping Junkie blog, but I did 34 weeks in the life of my business, like what I was doing day to day, all the marketing, the leads that were coming in, all that kind of stuff. And that became a book called Flipping Houses Exposed. And in that, I generated in those 34 weeks, 495 motivated seller leads. So that's where people were calling me and saying, hey, make me an offer to buy this house or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just somebody had a house that was vacant or something. It was actually they were wanting to. So 495 leads. Out of those 495 leads during the 34 weeks, I only turned 11 of those into deals. Which, looking back, that's so painfully atrocious. The amount of work, time, money involved in doing that much marketing, taking and handling that many calls and analyzing that many properties, going on that many appointments, and all those kinds of things is absolutely bonkers, because we had a certain level of success in the beginning, doing maybe 10 to 20 deals per year. And then saying, okay, we've made this much success. Let's try to get to about 35 deals a year and beyond. Well, without growing a team, that just meant more hours and more marketing, more leads, more appointments. It meant more of everything, more work. Mm-hmm. Right? Because it was all I really knew. And so, got stuck in that trap of thinking, this is where my mind was. We need more leads and deals. So I'll start measuring my marketing a little bit, but really I'm looking for ways to find other sources of marketing to bring more leads in. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's really not a very good sign of it. And I actually heard John Martinez, a sales, real estate sales professional, good friend of mine, but he had said,
yeah, I've had him on the show a number of times.
Did you?
And I know John really well too.
Great. And smart guy. And he had said something about, that you are treating this business as a hobby when you're changing your marketing every month, or you're chasing the new hot marketing idea every single month. Mm-hmm. And there's so much truth in that, because all of the very successful real estate investors that I know have 1, 2, maybe 3 channels that they really get all their deals from, because they've become experts at it. Mm-hmm. And they've really dialed it in. They know their numbers. They know what's going on. It's somewhat of a very predictable business at that point. Like, they've got it to the point where they're pretty confident they know what's going to happen in the next 3 months or 6 months, barring any big market changes. And And so, that's really what it was. It was treating the business somewhat as a hobby. I mean, it's like I had no business education. I didn't go to college for, get a business degree. I didn't know the first thing about business for the most part. I was just knowing that, well, I can put marketing out, I can buy houses, I can make money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the whole business side of it was really lacking. You want to hear about the transition, like the turning point?
Yeah. Let's go there. And while so it's on our radar, I'm going to definitely ask you questions around how you selected and how you even compensate an acquisitions manager, because I'm sure a lot of people, that is probably going to be one of the first things that people would try to add. And a lot of people, I've even seen people and get questions quite often. How do you compensate them? How do you stay on top of them? What type of follow-up? I mean, there's a number of things that we could probably spend a good podcast episode on that alone. But
oh yeah,
let's start with that transition.
Yeah, and I think that'll go nicely into those topics because it's really intertwined. So I had met Justin Williams in a roundabout way. He wanted me on his podcast, but at the time, Flipping Junkie was pretty popular, so I got a lot of requests, and I kind of ignored his email. Well, I met someone that knew him at an event, and he emailed me and connected us. And I kind of teased him after that because it was like he was stalking me at that point. But after talking with him, I was blown away because he was telling me I'm really literally only working about 4 or 5 hours a week in my business, my flipping business. And so I've got this podcast going, got these other things going. And so we talked a lot during that podcast recording a long time ago. And then right after the call, I was sitting there, my mind was just spinning. I was just like, whoa, this is strange. I've not talked to somebody that's done something like this before. And I was like, I've got to go out there and see him. I've got to go fly out there and just hang out with him out in California and see his operation, see what he's doing, and just shadow him and just, pick his brain, So I called him back and said, hey, do you mind if I fly out there and hang out with you? And he goes, sure. I mean, I guess we can plan something. I said, no, I'm talking about like tomorrow. I
gotta stop you there. That is quite telling what extent that you were willing to go through or to make something happen or to learn from somebody. I've had, you just don't, unfortunately that's a rarity, what you just did right there. And you automatically, instinctively placed the value in that conversation with him and the amount of, in the time and effort. I mean, that is telling. I mean, you put a little money on the line to get out there and see him and spend some time with him and learn from him. You've placed that necessary value on that and took the necessary action.
Yeah. And it was pretty scary at the time, and I didn't know if he'd reject it or anything, but he accepted. And I said, well, I'm just going to do it then. And I've kind of felt like on that high of hearing all of that and my brain buzzing, I need to do it now. Otherwise I'll find all kinds of reasons to talk myself out of it. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I flew out there and at first I kind of doubted him. I was starting to wonder because whenever he picked me up from the airport, we're starting to drive away from the airport, and he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, let's go check out some of your rehabs. And he says, well, I don't really know where they're at. And even if I went there, the contractors wouldn't know who I was. I said, okay, well, I'm just thinking in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of phony. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's just trying to become a guru online and saying he's doing all this stuff. So I literally doubted him. But he quickly proved that he was actually doing all that stuff pretty soon after. After sitting down, having coffee, talking, we met with his right-hand lady that was running pretty much the show for him, and all doubts disappeared. It was really cool to see. And to see that somebody would work for somebody else and take on a lot of those responsibilities happily and not want the risk and responsibility of doing the investments and all that kind of thing. So that was very eye-opening. And I learned a whole lot from that. And one of his friends, Andy McFarland, great guy. About a year after that, I think it was, I talked to him, and he was doing some different things, and I did the same thing. I think he had said something. He wanted to record a YouTube thing. So I was like, well, I'm going to fly out and see you tomorrow then, or real soon. And I flew out to hang out with him. And I can make that story really fast. I mean, there was great things meeting his team and all of that. But the big thing I took away from that one was he gave me a book called Traction by Gino Wickman.
Yeah.
And that gave me the framework with which to operate my business as a true business. It gave me the meeting structure, the planning out, the vision of the company, breaking things down into 3-year plan, down to a 1-year plan, down to quarters, and really systematizing the business and looking at the numbers, tracking KPIs. And that was a huge turning point in becoming a true business owner, right? One that created freedom for me. Because at that point there was there were new goals, right? Because it was, what are we going to track for each of these positions so that we know that, we're succeeding and our people are succeeding that we bring onto the team. Because those first hires that I made before that were, those were difficult, because it was just kind of like, come in and shadow me and I'm going to, show you how to do all of this, but nothing was documented. And it was kind of like thinking that I would show them a little bit and then they would take off and be as excited about learning and just learning on their own like I did whenever I got started, which was not a good way to go. Did not work out.
So, yeah. So you took those initiatives, you flew out there and understood what they were up to and how they were doing things. So when you got back, you're all fired up. You're ready to hire your first acquisitions manager. Where did you start?
It was actually kind of easy because my brother-in-law was interested in coming in, and he had already been on some appointments with me and hung out with me while I did some deals before. And so he was looking to come in and help us out. And so he was the first hire. I didn't know how to hire beyond that, beyond having somebody that was right. There to just interested in coming in. And so we worked with him for a while, and I don't know how long that was. I think it was probably about a year. But what I learned a lot about that interaction was how much of it is mindset in getting deals as an acquisitions person, because there was a lot of struggle there, I think, in getting the first deal. And I think there's a belief that some people will have in coming in saying, well, I can't. Why would somebody sell me a house that cheap? For as much as we're offering, why would they do that? And so there's all these like these mental roadblocks or false beliefs, because we're putting our position, we're trying to imagine that the seller is in our position where everything is fine. It's not that big of a deal. And not realizing that to them, they know they're selling it below value, but they are getting the convenience of just having it sold. And a lot of people are very happy with that. And they're okay with that, especially when they didn't pay for the house for so long. A lot of people we buy from inherited houses, right? So they didn't even have any kind of, payments or, anything like that beyond property taxes. And so I think that there was some coaching with respect to the fact that people do want to sell, and you have to believe that. I think you have to go into that believing that people will, because when you don't, you're coming in and you're gonna talk and talk and talk, and you're gonna try to justify everything, and that doesn't do well, because then people start wondering, why is this guy pushing so hard to convince me this is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that kind of training that comes with some time. Once we grew from there and started bringing on like a lead manager, dispositions, we were a part of a mastermind group, and we were learning things about, the personality test stuff, the DISC things for different roles. You want like a higher D for acquisitions and a higher C task-oriented person for something like lead intake, things like that. But I think a lot of it just has to do with also who's talking to the customers and, potential sellers of houses, and making sure that they're taking the time to be friendly and build rapport. Because I think at the end of the day, when you're buying directly from sellers, that's one of the biggest components is do they like you or not? Because I've had myself for 8 or 9 years doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many times where people told me I got offered more, but I liked you. Well, I liked you, trusted you more, so I want to go with you. And it just speaks to the fact that, yeah.
Yeah, I've received that type of feedback as well. Unfortunately, sometimes though, liking you only goes so far, and people's memories is very brief. So unless they like you and you stay in front of them, it can fall apart pretty quickly. So how did you decide how to compensate these people? Like, especially that first acquisitions guy. I know he was a relative, but you must have put some thought into how that was going to work out.
And I'm trying to remember what exactly the compensation was. I know that we paid a salary. Because there was, not a for sure. We didn't know what to expect as far as how many deals we were going to be able to close and the percentage of that and all that kind of thing. So he may have just been straight salary at that point. And I know that the next one that we had brought on that we had for a long time that actually ended up managing a lot of the team. What we did with him was we had, I think it was like a $50,000 salary and then commission. I forgot what it was, but maybe it was 10% maybe.
Mm-hmm.
10% of the net or something like that. And but the commissions actually came out of the salary. So if he made a total of $75,000 in commission, 50 of that was a salary and then 25. So the commission was only paid if it went over the 50,000 salary.
Sure.
So it's like, guaranteed stability for his family, but then, push an incentive to get over that.
Is that how you're compensating people today?
And today, actually, I don't have a team for buying houses. It's back to just being me, because I've actually transitioned to the software and I'm buying rental properties now. And so I don't have a team going on that. And actually, what had happened there was a year and a half ago, I got divorced, actually. And when we split things, she took the real estate business and I took the software business.
Oh, sure.
And then we split up what rentals we had and notes that we had and stuff like that. But so I decided that I would keep most of what I generate motivated seller wise, leads wise, is through my website. So I just, as leads come in from that, I work those myself and either wholesale or keep those rental properties.
Sure. So, you bring up the software. What was your background there that made you go down this approach, like building some of these solutions? I mean, you got the CRM and a few other things. Were you filling your own need and then kind of went from there, or how did that start?
Yeah. So I have a degree in computer science, and I was doing that before I got into real estate investing. I was doing software development, and early on I created CRM system for myself on my laptop to manage leads. And I saw the necessity there, but of course it was on my laptop. Something happened to that laptop, I was really screwed. I would lose all of my data, everything that I had.
Right.
And then over time, as things progressed and more was happening on the internet, and then we were having to where we could do a cloud-based system, we started building that and then that happened about the time that we were transitioning into bringing people in to help us out. So I had more time to do that. And really for me, that is the creative part of it. For the house business in the marketing in the beginning, the creative part was figuring out how to get motivated sellers to call me. I really absolutely love that. I could spend so much time just sitting there thinking of ways to reach motivated sellers that other people weren't doing. And I'm sure everybody's done everything at some point, but I mean, the fun of doing that myself as well, really resonated with me. But with the software, it never ends with what can be done. And so that's like a creative outlet for me. And I built, the first one was actually REI Mobile. And I think we had about 100 customers on there. And I didn't know how to run that business either at the time as the promotional part of it. And so I was kind of like, I knew the software, I was worried about it scaling.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if I scaled, if something would happen with the data, I was kind of worried about it. And even though we never had a problem, and I actually had an investor friend of mine that was local that was using it that was telling me, what are you doing? Why are you not this is incredible. This is so crazy that you're not marketing this. And I'm like, well, it's not good enough, because I just wanted to create, so if I went and did that, I could no longer create. And I think that really kept me from doing it. But I got over that over time, but it took a couple iterations. And so REI Mobile got redeveloped as Flip Pilot. And then Flip Pilot, we just revamped and made it Forefront.
Mm-hmm. And
so Forefront has been out for a while now. And, we've got hundreds of users on there that absolutely love the software, and I'm promoting it now. But the big thing that we did in the transition from REI Mobile to Flip Pilot was we actually had a Flip Pilot 1.0, and that basically did everything for everybody. I was friends with a lot of high-level mastermind people, and they were saying all the things that they wanted, and we were trying to build something off of Podio for them because they were all sick of Podio. And so we built in this
people
crazy...
eventually do get sick of Podio.
What's that?
Most people do get sick of Podio.
Yeah, any general use CRM is going to be a little bit clunkier to use. And, So basically, long story short, we built crazy phone stuff in there where you could have the soft phone dialer up on your web browser and actually forward it to a team member and track all this and that and the other thing. It was this huge system that did so many things. Well, it turns out that also made the usability difficult. And most people were not as large as all those people in that mastermind. So when it came to, that fitting the majority of real estate investors, it didn't happen that way. So it was kind of like a flawed thing of we need as many features as possible. Mm-hmm. So from that lesson, when we rebuilt that, we said, you know what, we're going to do this a different way. Because part of the problem was I was also a customer of it, right? So I was like, I want everything, which is like, you ever watch The Simpsons? Mm-hmm. You know where Homer Simpson built that car, the Homer Simpson car?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was like Flip
There's
Pilot.
so many features that eventually becomes unusable.
Right. And weird.
Yeah.
So there was that. What we did when we rebuilt it, because somebody actually even asked me, it was like, well, what is this for? And it took me a minute to really remember why what is this even for? Like you kind of lose the perspective of what the system is really for. Mm-hmm. Because then it becomes all about adding features, and that's sort of the race everybody is on. But it made me stop and say, okay, well, why did I need software in the first place? It's really just to make sure that I was able to track my leads so that nothing slipped through the cracks, and then that I could do follow-up to stay on top of it, because that becomes too much unless you have somebody dedicated to doing follow-up. And so really, though, at the end of the day, those are the two things. And so it's like, well, if we just become really good at that and make sure that we stick to making sure that you can do that very easily, simply, and in a way that's kind of enjoyable, software you like to use, because I think all of us have used software that we hate, and then some that we're like, oh, this is great. Mm-hmm. And so we spent a whole lot of time in UI UX, user experience, user interface stuff. And I've got the guy on my team, Josh, that's incredible at that. And we've built things, we've changed things. Now with this approach also, we communicate with the customers constantly. We have Zoom calls every other week, and people come on and then we'll say, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. Here's what it looks like. What's your input? What do you think? And they give input, and we change things before we build it. And that's how we've really grown the system, by doing that. And it's really kept it, one of our core values is simple. And so people, a lot of customers are always saying, we love that you're sticking to that core value of simple, because we've used other systems, started out great, and then they started adding everything, and it became just such a mess that that I find that I was in the system more than I wanted to be instead of doing deals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the software became sort of a problem more than an assistance. And he said, and the people with teams would say that, you know, I'm getting all these calls from my team and I've got to deal with all this stuff with showing them how to do things. And it's just, you know, it's not helping us. Like, it doesn't help us when it's not super simple to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, when you hear about that, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, well, what does he mean by that? Like, how did they make it super simple to use? And I'll just say that, if you've ever used software like Podio, where you're going through a lead and you're looking for information and you find that you have to go 6, 7, 8 clicks deep to get to something, do something. And then when you're done, you have to go back out and find where you were and go to the next thing, or find, you know, and you're just clicking way too much. But we've built it where it's, you know, you're not going more than 1 or 2 clicks in ever, and you never lose your spot. So if you've ever used Trello or anything like that, like a list of Kanban board style, you drag and drop. Everything is built on that and made to be where you don't have to click in deep and you don't have to scroll a lot. So we did a lot of focusing on what's important on this screen, what needs to go where. And, you know, one of those things is communication, right? When the system's built to help you take a lead and do everything that you can to turn it into a deal, really at the end of the day, the biggest, most important thing is communication. It's who's communicating what to these sellers, right? If it's not a deal yet, you're communicating with them about scheduling, about the house information. And then it's following up and, you know, saying, we made an offer. Have you considered it? What do you think? And then over time, following up if they haven't sold it, you know, to still try to buy the house. And so that's really kind of front and center in our system, is making sure that every communication is handled and you can quickly see all of the communications, but also on the record, you can see the whole history of everything that's happened and all the communications that have happened, including listening to phone call recordings and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So it sounds like you've applied a lot of what you learned in real estate, especially on how to stop treating it like a hobby, but treating it like a business. Would you say that's a fair statement when it comes to your software business as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. You know, I made some mistakes in the software business too. We had 19 people on the team at one point, and we're down to a lean, mean, actually 7 people on the team now, but it's great because it's all dialed in. Like we're all really work well together, and everybody owns their positions. It's been great.
So, I hate to pull you, because we could spend a lot of time on the software, but I hate to pull you back into the real estate investing. But with you're kind of in a unique situation now. Knowing what you know now, what are the things you would have done differently when getting started in real estate and investing or even flipping?
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, what I would do different is I would follow a book like Traction. I would follow the Entrepreneur Operating System. I would set up my plan. I would have my goal for the year, break that down into quarters, know what I'm measuring, and then I would execute. And then I would look and track those numbers every single week to know where I am, you know, what's happening. And I don't know if you know, a lot of people know about Traction, but they don't know about 90. It's called 90.io. And that's actually the software that they put out that allows you to do your meetings and stuff through the software, and then you can track your KPIs in there. And so that shows you week over week what your KPIs were, so you see trends, right? And the whole purpose of that, and I say that before I say team, because you kind of need to have the business set up for a team, you know, 4 people before you bring them on. And then so I would have those things set up. I would start executing. As I executed, I would document every single thing I did. And we use Tetra for that. And that's a free software that you can use to have your processes in place, easily searchable, all that kind of stuff. And what's great about that is your team can actually, ask a question or ask something, or, if they want to make an update to it or make a suggestion, they can do that. And it's all tied to the process. So everything's documented.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool. So I would document every single thing, because that was a big mistake in the hiring before, was come on, shadow me. Whereas, and if I did it again, I would say, come in, here's your folder for that role that you are taking within the company right here in Tetra. And this is all the things that you'll be asked to do. And then these are the KPIs that we're measuring to track your performance. This is how you will know whether you're doing a good job or not.
Sure.
And it's a number.
Okay. No, those are some good tips. I just realized we've been going for over almost 40 minutes here now. And I want to be respectful of your time. So I hate to close this out, because I think we could continue to build on this. But one question that I typically get a great answer for, and it might chew up some more time, is what question do you wish I would have asked you here today?
Wow. Something along the lines of personal development.
Sure.
We started the show with the thing, talk a little bit about mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there's been periods of my life where I felt like I did the hard stuff. I made it through. I had some success. And I got lazy. I got a little bit, I rested on that. And so I felt like I put in my hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were long stretches of time where it was like frustrating to have to deal with problems. It was like, I'm beyond this. And, it took a while to understand that was happening. Right. And really the source of that was just this idea that you grow and then you're done. It's kind of like you work out and then you don't need to work out anymore. Well, that's never true. And it's kind of amazing how it wasn't so obvious at the time, though.
Mm-hmm.
That I'd gotten to like a stale kind of plateaued sort of place. So I think just always keeping an eye out for that in ourselves, because really the outer world, right, is the reflection of our inner world, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we're not constantly looking at that, we could be dealing with things that we don't like to deal with because we haven't dealt with what's inside.
Yeah. There's been a couple times during this episode where you've given clear examples of I'm going to use the time of you talking about getting into flipping and buying properties for the first time and dealing with these leads. It's like a mindset light switch that occurs in most people when they get that first deal under contract. It will be the hardest deal you do. I guarantee it. That first deal is the hardest one. But once it happens, it's like a domino. It makes sense. Things click. And now you think it's possible. Mm-hmm. And don't you find the next one's easier?
Oh, yeah. And it comes so much faster, too.
Yeah. And it's just like you and your software business and a few other things. It seems like when you got to traction and the entrepreneur operating system, some of the building a business, now it seems like that's become your default. You're building businesses versus hobbies.
Hmm. Yeah,
it became a big mindset shift for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm still growing through it, but yeah.
I just find it. I just love listening to these transformations and the way people work through it. I mean, you're a perfect example of that. And I really appreciate the time you gave us and those lessons. And I hope you'll consider coming back sometime. Again, if you want to listen and hear more from Danny, check out his podcasts. You got The Flipping Junkie and Braver. Braver is a new podcast for you. Why don't you give us a little elevator pitch on that? What's going on with Braver?
Sure. Braver is my wanting to have a structured approach to people that are generating some leads, doing some deals, but finding themselves wearing all the hats and not really sure what to do, like where I was.
Sure.
Looking at the fears and what people are avoiding. And so whenever I interview people on that show, it's like, hey, what are you avoiding? Like, what is this really about?
Sure.
It's keeping you, because you know what you need to do, but you're not doing it. And why is that? And so that's really the name Braver was because it's a voluntary look at the fear. And, I was listening to Jordan Peterson. He was talking about fear and the way in clinical studies, they say that fear doesn't really go away.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we become braver.
Right.
And you can either choose to voluntarily face a fear or you can avoid it. If you avoid it, you're kind of closing in and hiding, and it's not good, right? But if you voluntarily face it, it's like a call to adventure, he says. It's like this, it's an exciting thing if you face it voluntarily. And so I just love that. And that's kind of like the focus of the show.
Yeah, great. So I want to give everybody one call to action. If they took one action for you, Danny, what should they do? Should they go to your website? Should they check out your podcast? What's that one action?
The one action would be to go to braver.fm. Check out that podcast. Because even if you're new, I think it's good to hear some of that stuff, to see as you're getting into the business, do that. So braver.fm for the Braver podcast.
No, that's great. I really appreciate your time, Danny. You have an open invite. Hope you take me up on that sometime.
All right. You never know. I might call and say, hey, why don't I fly up and hang out with you?
You're not going to want to come where I'm at.
Where are you at? I don't even know.
I'm up near Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh, wow.
So why don't you come up and see me in February?
No, I think I come in the middle of summer is actually, right now is a good time.
So, well, thank you, Danny. We'll talk again sometime.
All right. Take care. Thanks, Jack.
This has been the REI Mastermind Network. You can already tell that we've made some changes, and a few more are on the way. If you are interested in what we have planned, head over to patreon.com/REI Mastermind and support the show today. Financial contributions are always appreciated, along with a like, share, and review. It really helps us grow and reach more people with this valuable information. See you next time, and tell a friend.